Symmetrical book stacking, just like the Philadelphia Man's Turbulence of 1947.
You're right, no human being would stack books like this.
Listen! You smell something?
Welcome back, everyone. My name is Austin Revel. I'm coming to you from 2FBC Tactical. This is our shop here, located in New Prague, Minnesota. We're in the process of an upgrade, actually, opening an indoor shooting range and shop just a couple blocks from here. We look forward to showing that off to all of you and some of the interesting things that we'll have on the inside, as well as our new studio, as we continue our From the Vault series featuring interesting and historical firearms that come through. But today we're going to take a little bit of a pause on that From the Vault series, and I do encourage you to go over and watch those videos, as well as the videos on the history of national firearm laws in the United States. But we're going to talk about something that is really becoming quite popular today. It does have historical ties, but it has become more relevant and more readily accessible now than it ever has, and that is the suppressor or the silencer. So we have seen a massive uptick and suppressor purchases in the United States. Unprecedented levels, well over 700,000 sold just this year in the United States. In our shop, we have seen a 78% increase in suppressor sales. This is quite awesome to see as more people are getting into what these things are, what they can do, and how they can benefit the average shooter. So let's talk a little bit about the history. Then we're going to get into what their applications are. And then we'll talk about the kind of the process that you go through in order to acquire one of these devices, at least in the United States, and hopefully some changes that may be coming in the future. So when we look at the silencer, where it comes from, it actually goes all the way back to 1902. Hiram Percy Maxim is the one credited with designing, developing, and getting the first patent in 1909 for these devices, or devices similar to these. So if that name sounds familiar, his father is Hiram Maxim, inventor of the Maxim machine gun, the auto-loading machine gun. They made the Vickers machine gun back in 1897. It was the gun that, unfortunately for many soldiers in World War I, completely transformed the battlefield and made no man's land one of the deadliest places you could be on Earth. It changed how we tactically do warfare, even to this day. And some of the designs that came out of that conflict are even still being used in the modern militaries around the world to this very day. Now, Hiram Maxim went around the world showing off his machine gun and his latest invention. And unfortunately, he ended up going deaf, demonstrating the usefulness of his particular invention. So his son, Hiram Percy Maxim, decided to invent a sound muffling device that would help protect the hearing of those using these machine guns and rifles of the time. So he ended up developing the silencer. Now, the funny thing is, when people go, why do you need a suppressor? The same reason why a car actually needs a muffler. They're very loud. The average gunshot is right around 180, 185 decibels. The suppressor will bring it around, 140-ish decibels. It's still loud. It's still the sound roughly equivalent to a jet engine. For the average caliber. There are certain calibers and certain platforms you can certainly get whisper quiet. That is true, 300 blackout. But it brings the absolute decibel level down to a more enjoyable experience and also a safer hearing experience. That was the purpose that Hiram Percy Maxim was looking for. He also, at the same time as developing these, ended up developing the muffler for your automobile to accomplish the exact same thing. So when you hear things about what these things were designed for, just remember sound mitigation and hearing protection was always in mind. So he invents these in 1902 and actually becomes quite successful in selling them in the early years, or at least he was successful in the marketing of them. Unfortunately, the NFA, the National Firearms Act of 1934, would end up regulating these with a $200 tax stamp that basically put these out of the reach of anyone in the regular general public. And that would pretty much kill the suppressor market almost for 70 years, to be completely honest with you. It would go on and just kind of lie dormant. A few people would get them, but mostly we're talking law enforcement, military as the people who would invest in these things. And even then, they didn't really invest in them until Vietnam. You started to see them really prop up in Vietnam. There was some very, very limited use of suppressors and silencers in World War II. Yes, there were some British Commando carbines that you see pop up in, say, Call of Duty, Battlefield 5, Battlefield 1942, so on and so forth. The video games, that is true. The video games and movies would have you believe they were more widely proliferated than they actually were. Very limited use. And it wasn't really until Vietnam that we started looking at what we could actually do with these things. And that's where you see a couple of different designs start to take off, as well as applications. From the United States perspective, the Mac 11, Mac 10 ended up being a suppressed submachine gun that we heavily did invest in briefly during Vietnam. Maybe I shouldn't say heavily, but we did invest in Vietnam, as well as the Hush Puppy, which was upgraded Smith & Wesson Model 9s that were used for clandestine operations. Now, when it comes to the civilian world, while these were certainly available, the National Firearms Act, and if you'd like to know more about the National Firearms Act, please check out the previous videos on historical laws in the United States. But that would end up kind of tampered the whole market. $200 was really expensive. To put it in perspective, in 1934, $200 is the equivalent of about $5,800 today. You have to do that per item. But come around, late 1980s, 1990s, and as we get into the 2000s, $200 becomes less of a prohibitive cost. And now here in 2024, $200 is 8 weeks of groceries for most of us. So we've gotten to the point where that cost prohibiting factor is not really what it was. So these things have started to really take off. We're seeing massive sales increases across the board. And we're also seeing some really cool inventions in them as we see the next evolution of what the silencer is. Now, in terms of application of these things, and that's the number one question we get from people who come into our shop that don't really understand firearms and don't really understand what the purpose of these are. Why would you need a suppressor? What is the purpose of it? You trying to commit murder and get away with it? The truth is, suppressors are not as quiet as, say, Hollywood would have you believe, broadly speaking. Of course, for us firearm enthusiasts, there are ways to make them extremely quiet. This is true. Choose your caliber well, choose your platform well, and your application. But broadly speaking, we're still talking about a shot that is roughly the equivalent decibel level of a jet engine. Now, of course, while a jet engine is continuous and a shot is single use per trigger pull, that is roughly what we're talking about in terms of a decibel level meter. These things will, though, do something even greater, in my humble opinion, and that is eliminate 50 to 60% of the recoil out of your gun. So as you get into higher caliber guns, this really becomes useful, which is what leads me to some of the common reasons why people would buy them, and that is mainly hunters. We are seeing hunters really invest heavily into silencers. Couple reasons. A, you're outside, right? You're hunting, which means you are listening for ambient sounds of the game that you are looking for. That means ear pro is not something you really want to have with you or on you, so you can hear as the deer walk through the grass or walk through the leaves to come up to you that you're hunting. The other thing it does is beyond a certain distance, say 300, 400, 500 yards, depending on caliber, it deadens the sound a lot, which allows other hunters and other game to not be as spooked and give everybody else opportunities. It's more friendly to the neighbors as well, just keeping that decibel level down. And then especially in the hunting sphere, a lot of times we are using larger calibers. You're using 308s, 6.5 Creedmoors. If you're going way out west or up in Alaska, maybe 338 Lapua Magnum. You're using these really massive, very kick-heavy calibers. By using these things, you can bring that kick down to a more manageable level. And depending on your caliber, you might even be able to eliminate it completely. So let's just take this MP5 clone, this PTR right here. It has got a tri-lug suppressor on it right now. Now, the 9mm carbine already has virtually no kick just based on the weight and the pistol caliber that it uses. But for a new shooter, it's still noticeable enough. So a lot of times when I'm taking new shooters out, I will take something like this just to get them used to it with the suppressor on it, because this turns into basically a BB gun in terms of recoil with this on you. It still will have the crack of the bullet breaking the sound barrier unless we're using subsonic ammo, but it does make it a much more controllable platform for those who aren't used to shooting. So it's a great way to introduce those who are new to this into the firearms community. The other application that I think will start growing, and I personally advocate for, is home defense. So in the self-defense world, when it comes to defense inside your home, someone breaks into your house and you are forced to do what you have to do and defend yourself. Firing a gun inside your home is very loud. You also got to realize that you will not have time to put on ear protection due to the nature of the break-in. It surprises you. You're not expecting it. By having something like this on your firearm, it allows you to save your hearing just a little bit in that unfortunate event that, God forbid, I hope nobody ever has to deal with. When it comes to indoor firing ranges like the one that we build, this makes it so much more enjoyable for all those around you. Certain muzzle brakes and stuff, for those of us who have gone to the range, we all know really punish those standing beside them. That's just true. In order to mitigate the kick on recoil on certain rifles, they direct the blast out certain directions to help bring the muzzle down. But by doing that, that means all that concussive force, noise, and gas is headed to the person standing next to you. From an indoor firing perspective, you're usually in lanes and stalls very close to one another. It can be quite loud. Putting suppressors on your gun makes it, again, just a much more pleasurable experience for all involved. We do plan on hosting what we call Silent Night, which is suppressor-only shooting, just to demonstrate this fact at our new facility. So those are just some of the applications that you can have. Plus, I mean, let's just be real. These things are freaking cool. I mean, you can get, something like this B&T GHM, put your 45 can on here, and this is quite quiet. So this is really, really cool stuff. And when it comes to the technology itself, we are seeing a pretty massive leap forward in suppressor technology. We are seeing titanium cans like this Texas silencer right here. We also have our typical steel cans like we have right here, this Silencer Co. Sparrow on this TX22 tri-lug, just like this Silencer Co. Omega 9. And then we have modular suppressors now coming out as well. Something like this JK Armament one where you can unscrew the baffles themselves because it utilizes a cup design as opposed to the typical internal baffles. And you can bring the length of your suppressor down by removing the cups. And then I don't have one here, but I think one of the coolest designs that we're starting to really see, or the coolest leap forward in terms of technology, is the 3D printed suppressors. B&T, Huxworks, these are some of the big ones that are doing 3D printing, and including 3D printing titanium now, which is just unbelievable. You got to think that the hardest, rarest substance in the world, or one of the rarest substances in the world, is titanium. It's very hard to work with, which is why titanium has always been highly sought after and kind of prohibitive for most people. But now we can 3D print that and just have it done in a couple hours. It's just truly amazing what we can do technologically. And because of that, the cost of these things are going down. The days of suppressors costing $2,000 without your tax stamp of $200 are long gone. You can get yourself a good suppressor in that $550 range up to $1,000, and really it's as high as you want to spend. But most of the time you can get some really good ones at between $550 and say $750 plus your $200 tax stamp. It really opens up the door to people who couldn't afford these things before. Which brings us to what other reasons why these things become so popular. So the National Firearms Act requires certain steps and you have to complete in order to take one of these home. That includes fingerprinting. It includes taking a photo of a passport quality size. And it includes filling out a Form 4 with your FFL that is then submitted to the ATF with a check for $200. And then you have to sit around and wait for their approval. It used to be that you would have to sit around for months to a year plus. 18 to 24 months used to be the old waiting periods. This was all done by paper, longhand. And you would go in the order it came in, and there was only like 26 agents that were approving these things. And they were so slow because if one person got delayed in front of you, nobody moved until that person was cleared. Now, thanks to the American Suppressor Association, this is no longer true. They have automated the entire process with e-forms. It's still a Form 4, but the submission and all is done online. With companies that, like we partner with Silencer Shop, everything's been digitized. Your trust documents, your tax stamp, you can buy right through Silencer Shop and do it all in a package deal right at the computer with your FFL. And the wait times have come down to, for individuals, 2 or 3 days we're seeing pretty regularly. When it comes to trust, they brought that all the way down to 4 months. Now, for a trust, there's multiple people on the trust, so the ATF have to clear each one of those people, plus they have to clear the language of the trust document. Now, when it comes from a place like Silencer Shop, they have pre-approved their trust language with the ATF. It moves much quicker through them and companies like them, as opposed to going to your local attorney, having them write up a trust. Now, there is some things that you need to know about a trust. This trust has to be exclusive to NFA items. You cannot use a land trust or any other trust that you currently have assets in and add these things to it. And a trust for NFA items can be more than suppressors. It could be transferable machine guns, short barrel rifles, or if you live in the state that allows you short barrel shotguns. Unfortunately, in Minnesota, we do not allow short barrel shotguns. Now, in a minute here, I'm going to take you over to the Silencer Shop kiosk that we have and walk you through the what needs to be done over there and how it would all work, at least as far as our shop and shops like ours with Silencer Shop kiosks. But we are really, truly your one-stop shop. So if you want to know about what we can do for you, we can do your fingerprints here. We can do your digital photo here. With Silencer Shop, we can get your tax stamp here. If you want to get a trust, you can get it through Silencer Shop. We are a notary. We will notarize your trust documents and upload it to you, all included in your Silencer purchase, up to Silencer Shop and get it up to your spot. The only things you'll have to do is get your trust and your tax stamp, pay for those on silencershop.com. That's it. Everything else we take care of when it comes to the paperworks and final submissions. Again, we'll guide you right through that process. And from submission to take home, right now for individuals, we haven't had anybody go beyond 8 days yet. Luckily, it's in that 2 to 5 range typically. And then when it comes to trust, I've had as little as 2.5 months. So it's moving very quickly. And this has really sparked interest in suppressors. We really want to get to 1 million in the industry sold. This helps us with the common use test when it comes to getting these things off the National Firearms Act. But how about I take you over the kiosk and kind of just show you a little bit how this works. So I brought you over here to our kiosk here. We are a Silencer Shop dealer. We are very thankful to them to make this kind of Form 4 application process as simple as it can be to you, the end user. So this little device here allows us to take your fingerprints. You'll do your left 4, your left thumb, your right thumb, your right 4, and then we'll roll in each individual finger, left pinky to right pinky. It'll capture them. It will store them in a secure digital storage device held by Silencer Shop. And then this allows us to not have to fingerprint you again for your Form 4 applications because it will constantly be in their system. We can take your photo here as well. We have a little pop-up photo studio that we'll bring out. We'll take your picture right on the cell phone using the Silencer Shop app, and that will be within the ATF specs. It's great because this, since the photo expires after 1 year, this just makes it real simple to update it if you decide to buy another suppressor or another NFA item beyond that 1 year mark. The American Suppressor Association, we really have to give a shout out to them for modernizing this process and bringing the ATF into the 21st century. We're very grateful for them. Now, looking forward, also with the American Suppressor Association, and what is maybe the next step for these devices, we do believe that probably in the next 5 to 10 years, suppressors will most likely come off the NFA. There is some real momentum to do this. If you look at Europe, they don't treat these devices as anything because they require a firearm to function. Even though in U.S. code they are considered a firearm, they're classified as a Title II firearm, actually, they do not do anything unless they come with a gun. They are simply a metal tube with some baffle systems very similar to a muffler. Again, the same guy designed them. And they just mitigate sound. That's the only thing they do. They do not fire anything. They're incapable of firing anything. They do not increase accuracy. They don't end up being extra dangerous in any real shape or form. And they have so many health benefits to go with it, as well as shooting benefits. So I do think there is a future where these things are no longer on the NFA. I really do. But in the meantime, since the wait times are so low, it is worth getting into these things. And there are so many different options. We'd love to have you down to the shop, kind of show you what we have on hand, and then we can pick the right suppressor for you to fit your platform. We can even get you multi-cal suppressors that you can move amongst multitudes of calibers and guns. So please come check us out. If you really like this video, we'd really appreciate it if you liked, comment, and subscribed. If you'd like to support the channel, we do have a Patreon that we will link below. We're very grateful to bring to you these videos, and any help that you can give us would be much appreciated. But we love doing this. This is so much fun. Please check out our From the Vault series. We have more coming to you in September on that. Some really cool historical pieces that we're going to pull out of my personal collection, actually, and show it off to you guys. And then we'll do some more informative updates as we get into our new facility, kind of show off maybe some different reviews of firearms, as well as some training techniques. So we look forward to seeing you next time. Have a good one.